I'm Violet, and I've spent the last decade making sure Peak Pulse Biotech didn't crash and burn under the weight of its own ambition. One crisp Chicago morning, as the sun glinted off Lake Michigan and into our glass-walled office tower, I was hunched over a compliance audit sheet, triple-checking timestamps for a federal renewal. My desk, tucked in a corner of the open-plan floor, was a fortress of folders and post-it notes, each one a silent testament to years of keeping this biotech giant legally airtight. I wasn't just good at my job, I was the job. Every license, every certification, every regulatory thread that kept our multi-million-dollar contracts alive, they ran through me. That's when the video screen flickered to life, and there he was, Evan, all of 32, with a Manchester accent and a haircut that screamed, "I spent $200 to look effortless." The CFO introduced him as our new efficiency consultant, which is corporate speak for someone who's here to break things and call it progress. Evan's grin was all teeth, the kind you see on guys who think confidence is a personality. "Hi, everyone," he said, his voice dripping with that polished charm you'd hear at a tech conference happy hour. "I'm here to streamline operations, cut redundancies, and bring Peak Pulse into the future." His eyes locked on me through the screen, like he'd already decided I was the weakest link. I didn't flinch. I just clicked Save As on the folder holding every licensing document tied to my name, federal renewals, audit clearances, the works. I labeled it Sunday brunch menus and backed it up to a private drive. My mother, a nurse who raised me alone in a cramped Cicero apartment, always said, "Violet, never let them catch you unprepared." I wasn't about to start now. By lunchtime, I overheard Evan in the break room, joking with two junior analysts about phasing out old infrastructure. At 44, I wasn't old, but in Evan's world, if you didn't live on energy drinks and buzzwords, you were a relic. He didn't know I'd grown up scraping by, balancing night school and retail shifts to earn my business degree. He didn't know I'd built the compliance system he was so eager to dismantle, piece by painstaking piece, while he was probably still sneaking beers at uni. I sipped my coffee, black and bitter, and let his words slide off me. But inside, my pulse quickened, not with fear, but with the kind of focus you get when you smell a storm coming. That afternoon, Evan called a team huddle, all of us standing around like we were auditioning for a corporate retreat nobody wanted to attend. His slide deck was a parade of nonsense: agile compliance ecosystems, decentralized accountability hubs. I watched 3 interns nod like they were witnessing a revelation. "Some team members," Evan said, his eyes cutting to me, "especially those with legacy roles, will be reassessed to align with our lean strategy. We value your contributions, Violet." The word contributions landed like a pat on the head you give a dog before you rehome it. I smiled back, the kind of smile you give when you've already seen the trapdoor beneath someone's feet. My mother's voice echoed again. "They'll underestimate you, Violet. Let them. It's your opening." I wasn't just going to weather this. I was going to rewrite the ending. The next few days, the office felt like a pressure cooker with a faulty valve. Evan's streamlining was in full swing, and I was being edged out, one subtle move at a time. He reassigned my inspection prep to a marketing intern named Chloe, who thought FDA was a trendy acronym for food aesthetics. She asked if it meant redesigning the cafeteria's smoothie menu. I didn't laugh. I just nodded and watched her fumble with a dashboard she couldn't even log into. Meanwhile, Evan tasked me with reorganizing the janitorial supply closet. "It'll keep you foundational," he said, like I was a brick in a wall he planned to demo. I asked, calm as a winter lake, if I still had admin access to our licensing portal. He blinked, caught off guard, like I'd asked him to recite the periodic table. "Oh, we routed that to Chloe," he said. "You don't need it anymore, right?" Chloe, who still emailed screenshots instead of PDFs. I didn't argue. I just walked to a terminal in the back hallway, logged into the shadow admin panel I'd built years ago, my insurance policy nobody knew about, and revoked her access with a single click. If they wanted me off the ship, fine. But I wasn't leaving the captain's log behind. Back at my desk, I opened the compliance database I'd crafted from scratch, a digital tapestry of 47 licenses, each one tied to my name, my biometric signature, my authority. Every expiration date, Every regulatory body, every renewal cycle, it was all there, a fortress of red tape I'd built to keep PeakPulse bulletproof. I exported a fresh copy, encrypted it, zipped it, and renamed it Team Potluck Recipes. Then I emailed it to a private account I'd set up years ago, just in case. My mother used to say, "Violet, always have a back door." I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. That evening, I stayed late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to feel the system hum one last time. I cross-checked my credentials across 3 federal platforms, making sure every PIN, every clearance, every timestamp was still mine. Then, I printed a single page from my contract, tucked away in a drawer since my first day. Section 7C. In the event of involuntary termination, all company-paid licensing responsibilities and regulatory certifications shall be considered void, and all credentials will be rescinded within 48 hours. I folded it neatly and slipped it into my bag. Evan thought he was playing chess. He didn't know I'd already rigged the board. The next morning, I walked into the office and saw a poster above the copier. "Compliance is not equal to complacency," in a font that looked like it belonged on a motivational mug. Evan's handiwork. I overheard him telling a junior analyst, "We're re-interviewing everyone for their evolved roles. It's about alignment." Alignment, like we were planets orbiting his ego. When my turn came, I didn't bring a resume. I brought silence. Evan barely looked up from his laptop. "Violet, you've been here a while," he said, tapping keys like he was dismissing me in real time. "Institutional knowledge is great, but we're pivoting." He pulled up a chart with my name crossed out, replaced by TBD next to regulatory stewardship. Then he clicked a tab labeled Q3 license plan with a comment. "Can this be reassigned downstream?" Downstream meant some poor kid who didn't know a Form 483 from a post-it note. I smiled, not because I was calm, but because I could feel the fuse I'd lit starting to burn. My mother's words rang again. "They'll try to erase you, Violet. Make sure they choke on it." It was a Monday, the kind where the Chicago skyline looked gray and tired, mirroring the office's mood. Evan's weekly momentum sink felt like a sermon for people who hated their jobs but smiled anyway. He stood at the front of the bullpen, his blue blazer too tight, doing that palms-out gesture like he was taming a crowd of pigeons. "Let's start with candor," he said, and I knew what was coming. Candor is just a fancy word for cruelty in a suit. "While tradition is value," he went on, pacing like he was auditioning for a TED Talk, "stagnation is a threat." He stopped behind my chair, his shadow falling over me. "Certain legacy roles are no longer aligned with our forward momentum." The room went still. A few heads turned, eyes darting to me, then away. "Effective immediately," Evan said, his voice sharp as a paper cut. "Violet's position has been phased out." The words hit like a punch I'd seen coming for weeks. I stood up, not because I was rattled, but because my legs felt like steel, ready to carry me out of this mess I'd already outsmarted. 2 HR reps, both younger than my favorite sweater, shuffled over with a glossy folder. I flipped it open, scanned the termination page, no severance, just legalese and a line for my signature. I pulled a pen from my bag, signed it in one smooth stroke, and said, "I'll need a printed copy." Evan blinked. "It's digital," he said like that settled it. I stared until HR scurried off and returned with a stapled sheet, my receipt for their mistake. I walked out of that office with my head high, the Chicago wind biting my cheeks as I stepped into the loop. That night, my phone pinged at home, a confirmation email from the Federal Registry. "Your authority over licenses #IL 9274-01 to #IL 9320-47 has been relinquished. Entities dependent on these licenses will be marked non-compliant in 24 hours unless reauthorized." I didn't reply. I just poured a glass of cheap Pinot, sat on my couch, and let the Golden Girls rerun on TV wash over me. The fuse was lit, and I could already smell the smoke. By Wednesday, the office was a house fire with no extinguisher. At 9 a.m., procurement got a reply from a vendor. "Cannot ship. License IL 9274-01 expired. Contact certifying officer." That was me. By 10, The internal dashboard I'd built, my pride and joy, was a sea of red alerts, invalid credentials, orphan licenses, failed API calls to the FDA. Evan, still clutching his overpriced coffee, told a trembling analyst, "Just update the contact info." She tried to explain. "It needs reauthorization, sir." Violet was the only certified officer. Re-registration takes weeks. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was deadly, like the moment you realize the parachute won't open. Evan muttered, "Why didn't anyone tell me?" The analyst, barely 25, said, "Violet did. I wasn't there to see it, but Ruby, my old friend from documentation, blind copied me into an email thread." Someone screenshot Evan's Slack message to legal. "How do I override a license expiry tag in the dashboard thingy?" My dashboard, my fortress, was now his nightmare. I designed it to lock down if my credentials were revoked, a failsafe for a day like this. I ate my cereal, smiling, as Friday morning, the office was a ghost town of panic. An FDA audit team showed up unannounced, clipboards in hand, ready to inspect our clean rooms. The front desk called compliance, voice shaking. "They're asking for the license holder." Silence. Evan, sweating through his blazer, sprinted to legal, barking, "Can we reinstate Violet's credentials?" A junior associate fumbled through Google like it was a cookbook, while Evan tried my old login. Access denied. User not found. He called the Federal Registry, got transferred 3 times, and heard Violet relinquished her authority. Reinstatement takes 4 to 6 weeks. Nathaniel, the CEO, had just returned from a conference in London, his tan still fresh from a rooftop bar. He walked into the ops room expecting a quick briefing and found a war zone. Vendors canceling, clients threatening lawsuits, fines piling up like parking tickets. He pulled up my termination papers on a monitor, scrolling until he saw my name on every license, every renewal, every compliance chain. "You fired the license holder," he said, his voice low, like he was naming a crime. Evan stammered. Her role was redundant. Nathaniel's laugh was sharp, like broken glass. "Her name's on everything that keeps us legal. And you thought you could reassign it like an email address." He grabbed his phone, tried my number. No answer. HR admitted they'd tried too, but I was unresponsive. Nathaniel sat down, rubbing his temples. "Get her back," he said. Evan coughed. "She might not want to." Nathaniel's glare could have melted steel. "Pay her. Name a wing after her. Fix this." Ruby called me that afternoon, her voice soft but urgent. "Violet, did you do this?" I stir my coffee, staring out my window at the Chicago skyline. "No," I said, my voice steady. "They did." I didn't hang up angry. I didn't need to. This wasn't revenge. It was consequences, clean and simple. My mother always said, "Violet, don't fight with fire. Just turn off their oxygen." I'd done exactly that. By evening, Nathaniel's team sent me an email. Consulting role, 6-month contract, generous bonuses, full gag order. No apology, just desperation wrapped in corporate jargon. I read it twice, then typed my reply. I don't return to burning buildings, especially ones where I was set on fire for streamlining. Attached, my termination clause, Section 7C, and a screenshot of your dashboard. My name grayed out, irreplaceable. I hit send and felt the weight lift, not because I'd won, but because I'd walked away whole. 3 weeks later, I stood in my new office at Apex Core Solutions, a competitor just across the river in Chicago's West Loop. The glass walls framed a view of the city's heartbeat, and my chair didn't squeak when I leaned back. I'd landed as Director of Compliance, a role that came with an espresso machine and a team that listened when I spoke. My LinkedIn post was simple: grateful to join Apex Core, where integrity isn't an afterthought. Below it, a quiet bombshell. Apex Core secures Omega Tech and Vinex contracts, citing compliance confidence. Those were Peak Pulse's crown jewels, clients they'd lost when their certifications tanked. Back at Peak Pulse, the dashboard never turned green. Fines rolled in, vendors bailed, and the holiday party was canceled for budgetary reasons. Evan was demoted to a corner desk, his title now a vague associate liaison, his monitor a relic from 2005. Nathaniel was still pacing his suite, dodging calls from angry clients. Ruby texted me a photo of a memo. Compliance restructuring underway. All hands on deck. I smiled. They were trying to rebuild what I'd carried in my head for years. Every morning, I sipped my coffee, Colombian, black, no sugar, and checked industry alerts. Peak Pulse Biotech. License status pending. Audit failures under appeal. I didn't gloat, not outwardly. But pinned to my monitor was a yellow sticky note, written in my steady hand. I was the license. No signature, no flourish, just the truth. My mother's voice echoed one last time. Violet, you don't need to shout. Just make sure they can't forget you. This journey wasn't just about me. It was about every time someone's been written off, told they're redundant when they're the one holding the keys. I'd grown up watching my mother work double shifts, her hands cracked from hospital disinfectant, never complaining because she knew her worth. I carried that with me through every late night, every audit, every time I was underestimated. Now, standing in my new office, I felt her pride, my pride, and the quiet power of knowing I'd turned their chaos into my castle. To everyone who's walked this road with me, thank you. You've stood by me through betrayal, strategy, and a hard-won victory. If this story hit you where it hurts, where it hopes, where it fights, hit that subscribe button and join us. We're telling stories of grit, justice, and new beginnings, one license at a time. Keep building your own truth, and I'll see you at the top.